Hello and welcome to our video lecture number 4. Today we're going to be talking about introductions and conclusions, two very important parts of the speech process. What we're going to help you try to do is not only understand the proper way to create your introduction and conclusion, but also help you understand why both of these parts of the speech are so important to delivering a good product. Now remember, there are 3 parts of an effective presentation. Only one is the body. To help people remember what is in the body of your speech, you do need to introduce it well and then give a strong summation or conclusion to make your comments memorable. Also, before we get into today's information, remember this. You should select your topic, determine your main and subpoints, and write the body of the speech before you start working on your introduction or conclusion. How you can properly write an intro or summation until you know what you're going to be introducing or wrapping up, I don't understand how you can do that. Know what's going to be your topic, know what's going to be in the body of the speech, then you can write the intro and the conclusion to that. Now on the introduction, your text lists 5 important functions. The first, of course, to get the attention of the audience. We developed 2 lectures to this idea of getting the attention. You also want to introduce the subject. You want to give the audience a reason to listen. You're establishing your credibility with the introduction, and you're also previewing the main ideas. Now let's break those down. Start with getting the audience's attention. Unless you get the attention of the audience quickly, your speech is likely to fail. Remember, you're preparing the audience to listen to the remainder of the speech. Also, you want to make sure that that attention you get is favorable. If you alienate or disgust the audience, your speech is likely going to fail as well. Second, quickly introduce the subject to the audience. And the best way to do that is to include a statement of your central idea, or what I call your thesis statement, to the audience in your introduction. The third function of the introduction, give the audience a reason to listen. You can do this by showing the audience how the topic affects them. For example, you're doing a presentation on why people need to get a flu shot each year. Instead of just showing some statistical information on the number of people who get the flu, start with a story about someone in your community or in the community of the people you're talking to who got the flu because they didn't get a shot. Tell the audience how that person had to be hospitalized, of cost of however many dollars, and how that person had to miss 3 weeks of work, or however much work that person had to miss. Also, did the flu spread to other members of the family, causing problems there? If you can tell that story, then you have made it personal to your audience, and there is a good chance they will pay close attention to what you have to say, because again, this could affect them. You can see this every night in news, in the stories on TV. Whatever the reporter is doing a story on, pay attention. Chances are they're going to personalize it, if at all possible, so the audience or the viewers can relate to the problem or the issue, will stay with the story, will stay with the newscast, and then also remember what that reporter had to say. Fourth on our list, establish your credibility. The book says a credible speaker is one whom the audience judges to be a believable authority and a competent speaker, someone they can trust. You can by being prepared. Tell the audience also of your personal experiences with the topic. This lets the audience know that you are you've been through this. You understand what you are talking about. You are a credible source of information to them. Also, to help establish your credibility, take a few minutes when you get to the podium and just stop. Face the audience. Establish your eye contact before you start your speech. And this does a couple of 3 things for you. First of all, it establishes your presence. It allows you to take a breath and calm yourself just a little bit, so maybe you don't just rush right into the introduction. Also, it helps to build your inner confidence. The final purpose of the introduction is to preview your main ideas. You're telling the audience what you plan to present, and it helps organize the message for the listener. Remember that old adage, I think I talked about it in class the other day when we were doing our first speeches. You tell the audience what you're going to tell them. That's your introduction. You tell the audience what you are telling them. That's the body. And then you conclude by telling the audience what you just told them. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them what you just told them. Other information about introductions, and there are several ways to get started. We talked about humor. using that as an attention getter in one of those earlier lectures on getting attention. But there are a number of other possibilities as well that use whatever works best for you. You can use startling facts, something that they had no idea about. It will get their attention quickly. Quotations, lyrics from songs, another possible way to get attention. Historical events, tie what you're going to be talking about to something that has already happened. This could happen again. This has already happened. This is how we can learn from it. There are ways you can use historical events. Recent events. This is one of my favorites, and I'll have you an example on how to use recent events in just a moment. Personal references, of course. Talk about the occasion, where you are, and then refer to preceding speeches. We saw that done in one of our speeches of introduction a couple of weeks ago, and you may remember I pointed it out that was a very effective way of getting rapport with the audience. Listen to what people who have gone before you have said, tie that into the speech. Now, as I said, I like personally to use recent events. They're often fresh on the minds of the audience because the event has likely been in the news. It's likely the topic of conversations around family dinner tables. A lot, and by using that event, you show that you know what's going on in their lives, and also you are finding a way to reach a nerve perhaps inside them that gets them to really focus in. Here's an example. I had a former student who was doing a story on euthanasia, or doing speech on euthanasia, and she started with just some plain old facts about euthanasia. Again, this is an easy way to start. You can easily go online and research your topic and find some facts, and she had done this. But immediately you could see the eyes of the others in the audience just glazing over. Some were upset that she'd even brought the subject up. So there were two problems. She was boring because nobody wanted to hear this topic, and then also some were upset about it. Had she used a story that had appeared in the news just a few weeks before, might have had an entirely different effect and different outcome. Here's the story. Again, we're talking about the subject of euthanasia. Whether you like it, whether you're against it, doesn't matter. Here's the story, and I think it would affect you if you had heard this one. Police were called to the home of an elderly couple in South Dallas a few weeks ago. When they got there, the report had been there were shots fired. They got there and they found a woman inside the home dead. Her husband had killed her. All right, that sounds very cut and dry, very straightforward. It's all black and white, no gray area here. The man was taken into custody, and then reporters began getting hold of this story, and some very, very unusual facts began to come out from the story. The woman who had been killed was suffering from dementia, had been for years. The husband, her only caretaker. All accounts say that he had been extremely devoted to her for years, and they had been married for more than 75 years. They were each other's best friends. They were inseparable for more than 75 years. On the day of the shooting, the man had just come home from the doctor's office. He had just been told he had terminal cancer and had 3 to 6 weeks to live himself. He was afraid of what was going to happen to her after he was gone. They were poor. They had no other family members. They had no close relatives or friends that he could count on to take up the slack when he was gone. And he also feared that she would be horribly upset and just lost because all of a sudden he was gone from her life. So he acted and took her life, and a few days later prosecutors declined to prosecute. He was released, and he did die within just a few weeks. So no matter what side you are on this issue, the story says this is an issue that has two sides. There is some gray area that needs to be looked at, and as a member of the audience, you are compelled to listen further to what the speaker has to say. This says it's so much better than just a few facts about the idea of euthanasia in the opening of a speech. One other note, now the book suggests the use of rhetorical questions, the kind that you don't expect an answer to, but definitely can generate some thoughts in the minds of your audience. And it can prompt the audience to participate in your introduction and in your speech. But there are a couple of things that, having said that, we need to take a look at. First of all, a member of the audience might answer the question out loud, create a distraction. Is that something you want to deal with? A rhetorical question might encourage the audience to begin analyzing your speech in a way that is counter to what you are offering. And they're not listening to you, they're thinking about how they would deal with the story. Also, is that rhetorical question, does it have a yes or no answer? The audience might say no and turn off before you even start. Now let's talk about conclusions. With a conclusion, you're trying to summarize your speech. You're trying to re-emphasize that thesis statement in a memorable way. You want to motivate the audience to respond if that is part of your speech, and then you want to provide closure. In summarizing, you want to give a strong, positive restatement of your thesis and the main points of the speech to reinforce your major thoughts. At the same time, you do not want to include any new evidence or points. This extends the speech rather than concluding it. Any evidence needs to go in the body of the speech. It is okay to say in conclusion, but you should also change your tone and your stance to signal the audience that the end is coming. You may also want to pause just a moment or two between the last point of the speech and the start of your conclusion. This can also signal to the audience that we're near the end. If you do move around while speaking, do not move from the podium or where you're standing to your seat while saying your last few words. This indicates a lack of confidence to the audience. You want to finish your speech, stand straight and erect for a few moments, look squarely at your audience, then return to your seat. Bottom line, introductions and conclusions lead your audience into and out of your presentation. And for maximum effect, both elements must demonstrate the positive attitude of the speaker toward the audience and the process.